and it suddenly clicked. I had always thought that my paralysis was the result of my accident, but in reality, it was all because my mother had been drugging me, and all so that she could use me as a prop to get money from my grandparents. It had been very clever, masking my condition by saying it was diabetes. At least not until I met someone who actually had the condition and figured things out. After figuring it out, though, what my grandparents were saying made a lot of sense, but I didn't think it was enough. I was beyond furious just knowing that my disease was caused by my mother. Hi there, my name is Tanya, and I'm just wondering if anyone else out there has a mother as clinically insane as mine. Like, I'm well aware that many people have abusive parents, but mine takes the cake. To start off with, my parents never got married. They were junkies, and when I was born, they both promised their parents that they would get clean, but unfortunately, my father never did, and before I was even 1, he passed away from an overdose. After that, my mother swore that unlike my father, that she would do the hard work and never do drugs again. My grandparents believed her, and for some time she walked the straight and narrow. I remember when I was very young as a pretty happy time. That is until my accident. My mom told me that I had been playing on a jungle gym when I passed out and fell. The doctors said that the fall damaged my spine and caused me to be bound to a wheelchair. Later after that, we found out that I had passed out because I was diabetic. So on top of being stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I also had to take insulin for my condition as well. Now, neither of these things, really on their own, prevented me from having a happy childhood. But my mother was terrible with money and never could figure out a way to save up enough money to cover my medical bills and to pay for her lifestyle. Luckily for us, her parents, my granny and grampy took pity on us and would routinely give her money.
Hey, listen, I'm a little short this month. Can you please give me some money to help cover Tanya's medical bills? Her insulin is just so expensive. It's just awful how much she needs just in order to stay alive. Yes, of course we will help.
Anything for our amazing granddaughter.
The older I got, the more money my mom seemed to need. Although to me, it never really seemed like my medication routine ever changed. But my grandparents always came through, and whenever my mom was a bit short on cash, they always gave her what she needed without question. Over the years, they must have given her tens of thousands of dollars. There were definite times when I felt guilty being sick and being a burden not only on my mother, but on my grandparents as well. Even with that in mind, my life was a pretty happy one overall. The first indication that something was unusual was when a new student moved to my school. Her name was Rebecca, and we had a lot in common. Both of us loved the same kinds of music and movies, and she had diabetes too. However, one day I saw her testing for her sugar levels and was incredibly confused. "What are you doing there? What is that machine?"
This? It's my blood glucose meter. It helps me measure how much sugar is in my blood so that I know if I need to eat something or if I need to take insulin to balance my diabetes. Don't you have one as well?
No. I've never seen such a thing before.
I thought you said you had diabetes just like me. How do you manage your sugar without one?
I don't know. My mom always gives me my insulin shots.
She does? I give myself mine all the time.
You do? How?
Well, I inject them into my arm or stomach. My doctor showed me.
Oh, my mom always injects them into the middle of my back.
That's really weird, Tanya. Are you sure you have diabetes?
I was incredibly confused, and when I went home, I asked my mother why my medication was so different than Rebecca's, and she told me that that was normal and that we just took different medications, and that mine was safer and needed fewer doses than hers. Something about the way that she told me about it, though, felt odd. I had never had a reason to doubt my mother before, but suddenly I felt that something didn't feel right. Later, when I was alone, I went online and searched for diabetes medications and how they were administered, and what Rebecca told me was entirely true. I couldn't find anything about the way I was getting my treatments. I was so confused, but I also knew that if I went back to my mother, she would be upset that I didn't trust her and that she would only repeat herself. And so I didn't say anything for a bit, but one night, when my mother was out with some friends of hers, my granny and grampy came over to look after me while she was gone, and a few minutes after they came over, I told them that I was going to my room to study, but secretly I snuck into my mom's bedroom and began to snoop through her closet. I wanted to find where she kept my diabetes medication, and after some digging I found a large metal tin. Inside was a box of syringes, a couple of plastic bags with funny-smelling crystals inside, a pipe and bottle that had the name of a drug on it that I couldn't identify. I brought the tin along with everything inside to my grandparents. "Hey guys, I found this in my mom's room. Do you guys know what this stuff is?"
Yes, that garbage is the same kind of drug that your father overdosed on. Your mother swore that she stopped using such things.
How do you know she is using them? Maybe she just keeps them as a reminder.
I'm sorry, Tanya, but if they are in the house, then that means that she is using drugs again.
So what should we do?
We shall of course take you away to live with us. As for your mother, we don't know.
And what about the other drug? It's not insulin, so what is it? They didn't know, and so they looked it on the internet and found that it was a paralytic drug. And it suddenly clicked. I had always thought that my paralysis was the result of my accident, but in reality, it was all because my mother had been drugging me, and all so that she could use me as a prop to get money from my grandparents. It had been very clever, masking my condition by saying it was diabetes. That way, no one would question her giving me shots all the time. At least not until I met someone who actually had the condition and figured things out. After figuring it out, though, what my grandparents were saying made a lot of sense, but I didn't think it was enough. I was beyond furious just knowing that my disease was caused by my mother. She had made me think that there had been something very wrong with me, and that I was a burden that held my family down, and all so that she could use the money to feed her drug habit. I told my grandparents that I really needed to do something about the way that my mother had used me, and that I really needed them to trust me. We left a note saying that we found my mother's drugs and that I was going to stay at my grandparents' house for a few days. I included a section that she wasn't to contact me until she was ready to get clean and give up the drugs, and that I was taking my insulin medication with me, so she didn't have to worry about my condition while she worked on herself. My grandparents were confused, but they wanted what was best for me, and so they chose to trust me, at least for a little while. For 4 days, I stayed at my grandparents' house, and on the 5th day, my mother showed up. She looked incredibly rough. She was pale and sweating a lot and was clearly in withdrawals.
Hey, Tanya, I'm so very sorry. I really did try to stop using drugs, but I just couldn't kick the habit. But for you, I promise that I'll get clean. I haven't used in the last 4 days.
Well, I'm proud of you. It can't be easy. However, that hardly excuses you for what you've done to me for so many years.
What do you mean? I've been a great mother to you.
Oh, you have? It was then that I stood up out of my wheelchair and punched her as hard as I could in the stomach. The surprise of it and the force of it made her double over in pain. I could tell that she was taken by surprise. You made me think that I was going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life. There is no way of knowing if giving me those drugs damaged my organs. You used me as a tool to steal money from my grandparents and to feed your addiction. That was when she broke out in tears and began sobbing and apologizing. Oh, spare me those crocodile tears. You have no idea how angry I am with you. There is nothing you can say or do that will ever make me forgive you. I hate you more than I've hated anything in my whole life. But you should know that I've written my life story and spread it online. The story is spreading online like wildfire, and people really seem to hate you almost as much as I do. Oh, and I also told the police what you did. They would like word with you. Just then, police officers came up. They had agreed to wait until I mentioned them, and then they swarmed my mother and threw her in handcuffs and then in the back of police car. Weeks later, the public was crying out for blood. People everywhere online were talking about what my mother had done to me, and they were demanding that she face serious punishments for the pain and torment that she caused me. As a result, the judge took that into account when he sentenced her to prison. She ended up being convicted of child abuse, child endangerment, and the fact that she essentially tormented and held me captive for my whole life was taken into account. To be honest, I was surprised when she was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. A few years later, I was approached by a movie studio that wanted to buy the rights to my life story, and I ended up being given quite a huge amount of money. I tried to give some of it to my grandparents in order to make up for all the money that my mother stole from them, but they refused and made me keep it all for myself. It really was a good amount, as I was able to pay for college, a new car, and had more than enough to buy a house, and still have some money to put away for a rainy day. I'm very happy with my life now, although I would trade it all for a chance at a normal life, even though I now live a happy and healthy life. The pain of knowing what my mother did to me still haunts me, and the only solace I have is knowing that my mother is beaten up regularly in prison. Her fellow inmates hate her as well, and make sure to remind her of the pain that she inflicted on me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.